Many Jews today feel the need for a Jewish renaissance. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift not only physically but spiritually out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
The common practice today is that when there is a Zimun for Birkat HaMazon, each person nevertheless recites Birkat HaMazon to himself quietly. Was this Chazal's intention?
There is no doubt that this was not Chazal's intention. From the words of Chazal in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, from the words of all the Rishonim, the Geonim, the Rishonim, and even, as I will mention in a moment, from the words of the Aharonim, it is clear that the intention of the Hachamim regarding Birkat HaMazon and Zimun that precedes it was that when you have three or more people, one person says the bracha of Zimun, that is to say, to announce and to get everyone's attention that we are now about to say Birkat HaMazon, and they respond to that, and then he himself continues and begins to recite Birkat HaMazon word for word aloud, and all those present are to listen to what he is saying, pay attention, and have kavanat halev, and concentrate on what he is saying, and say Amen at the end of each bracha. And in this fashion they are Yotzei Yedei Hova. It is exactly like the concept of Hazarat Hashatz in the Beit Knesset, where the Shliach Tzibur repeats the tefillah aloud, word for word, and the idea is that every individual present stands and hears and listens and concentrates on what the Shliach Tzibur is saying in the tefillah, and responds by saying Amen, and by so doing they are considered themselves to have davened a second time, as we have mentioned in another shiur. The same is true with Birkat HaMazon, and this was the intention of the Hachamim. And if one looks in all the sources of Hazal and all the Posekim, one finds that the idea that all present should say Birkat HaMazon quietly to themselves is mentioned for the first time in the Shibbolei HaLeket, which was a book of halacha written by one of the Rishonim. He quotes Rabbeinu Avigdor Kohen Tzedek, Rabbeinu Avigdor Katz, who was a very great Baal Tosafot, who lived in Italy. And therefore, precisely for this reason, because it is only mentioned in this one source, and at that time in history, in the Middle Ages, we have to ask ourselves why this was the case. This question has not been properly investigated and fully elucidated in any book or source with which I am familiar. It is clear to me that the reason for the suggestion made by Rabbeinu Avigdor Katz that every individual present, even though there is a Zimun, recite Birkat HaMazon quietly to themselves, the reason for this suggestion was that living as he was in the Middle Ages, at a time when Hebrew was not a spoken language, was not the mother tongue of basically any Jew in the world, even Jews who were familiar with Hebrew to some extent, who prayed every day in Hebrew, perhaps they learned Torah in Hebrew, but it was not a language which they spoke, and therefore the familiarity with and the ease of use of that language for such a person is not the same, cannot be compared to the familiarity and the readiness with which a person can follow what another person is saying in a given language. As we all know, it's easier for us to follow what another person is saying, for example, to listen to a person giving a speech or reading aloud a text in our mother tongue. It's much easier for us to follow that text as being read out in our own mother tongue than it is to follow a text being read out, shall we say, or a speech being given in a foreign language, even though we do understand that foreign language, sometimes even rather well. Nevertheless, it is not to be compared to the former case, because our minds are not wired up in that way to readily absorb, immediately take note of everything that is being said, and it is more of an effort for us to follow what is being said in a foreign language, even if we understand that language. This was the situation for Jews in the Galuth. In other words, we are discussing here another example of another kilkul, another problem, another form of crisis, if you will, another breakdown in the system of Judaism, of halakha, caused by the galuth. And therefore, it was difficult for people just to listen to Birkat HaMazon being recited by the mevarech, by the person who said the Zimun, who began the Birkat HaMazon. And therefore it was suggested by Rabbeinu Avigdor Katz that in this situation, b'di'avad, it is preferable that every person say the bracha for themselves. Because either by so doing they will be able to concentrate better, and the assumption perhaps is that they do understand Hebrew, but they will understand it better, they will concentrate more successfully if they are saying it themselves. And B, also perhaps for those who don't understand Hebrew at all, if they say it themselves, it will at least be Yotzei de Chovah, because they recited it themselves with their own mouth. And this can also be detected, this logic, the fact that the contingencies, the realities, the difficulties caused by the galuth are what brought about this change in policy, so to speak. This can even be seen in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, who says explicitly that although it is more correct that the Birkat HaMazon be recited by the one person, by the Mizamen, by the Mevarech, and everyone just listen and say Amen, nevertheless today, he says, Kahayom, today, nowadays, and keep in mind, of course, the Hafetz Haim was writing in Tsarist Russia after nearly 2,000 years of Galuth, and many Jews were not very familiar with the Hebrew language. Certainly their fluency was not very great, and therefore it is quite obvious that they had difficulty concentrating on the Hebrew being recited, sometimes being recited quickly by another person, by another Jew. Therefore he says, today it is better that we each recite Birkat HaMazon by ourselves. Today, Baruch Hashem, many Jews, particularly here in Eretz Yisrael, speak Hebrew on a daily basis. Either it's their mother tongue or they are very familiar with the language because they've lived here a long time. And therefore, it is not really there's nothing difficult at all, and there's nothing insurmountable at all about the task of listening to someone reciting Birkat HaMazon and having kavanah, listening and saying Amen. Today, the situation therefore has changed, and perhaps also in Chutz La'aretz, I think there are many Jews who understand Hebrew today better than was the case frequently in the Galuth. So wherever possible, wherever a person knows that they are capable, and I would say today this is true for many, many Jews, huge numbers of Jews, wherever a Jew knows that he is capable of listening to Birkat HaMazon being recited by another person and concentrating and responding Amen, that is the correct procedure.
Are there other examples of the Galuth having had a similar effect on halachic practice?
Yes, I think that the situation today that we find very commonly that Jews do not focus on the Shliach Tzibur, on the Hazat Hashatz that is repeated in the Beit Knesset, and therefore that whole part of tefillah is something very undignified and messy, so to speak. And Jews seem not to know what they are expected to do during Hazat Hashatz. I think this situation was also brought about by the Galuth in the following way. The more Jews were removed from their mother tongue, from Hebrew, the more and more it became a foreign language to them, the less and less they were able to concentrate and listen to the text of the tefillah being recited by the Shliach Tzibur. And thus they found themselves less and less interested, in very simple terms, with what was going on at that point during the tefillah. So Hazat Hashatz became a bit of a free-for-all where some people sit and some stand and some learn and some walk about, and the whole concept of Tefillat HaTzibur, the Hazarah of the Tefillah by the Shliach Tzibur, became more and more degraded. This is another example, I believe, of the deleterious effects of the Galuth on normative halachic practice.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.